Now, if there's one leader Boris Johnson looks up to, is Winston Churchill. The UK Prime Minister often sees himself as Churchill's heir. But now it looks like Johnson is having his own Churchill moment. Having written a book about Churchill, the UK Prime Minister knows one thing: success in war does not guarantee leadership. Churchill was known for his leadership against the Nazis in World War II, but even that could not stop him from losing the elections in 1945. Will it be the same with Boris Johnson? In January, Johnson's career as Prime Minister was in the pits. The Partygate scandal nearly ended his premiership, but soon after, war broke out in Ukraine. Britain needed stable leadership amid a war in Europe, and Boris Johnson miraculously managed to save his career. The UK Prime Minister is often known as the master of political survival. He survives scandals that would have sunk his rivals. But this time, the blustering Prime Minister is facing a moment of truth. First, he was fined for breaking COVID rules set by his own government, and now it looks like he may have even initiated some of those lockdown parties. UK media reports claim that one lockdown party was led by the Prime Minister himself. The gathering was initially to mark the departure of one of his aides, but when Boris walked in, he turned it into a party. The UK Prime Minister started pouring drinks for everyone. He even poured a drink to toast his aide, Lee Kane. Remember, these parties were happening at a time when the country was grappling with COVID-19. Thousands were at home, unable to meet or bury their loved ones due to the rules. These are also parties that Johnson had first denied attending. After weeks of denials and stonewalling, Johnson even apologized in Parliament, but that did very little to quell the scandal. And his net approval ratings hit rock bottom. They were as bad as Margaret Thatcher during Britain's poll tax crisis. Some of it recovered during the war, but for Johnson, it was never the same again. He got less popular with voters and some of the Tory leadership. For now, Johnson has been fined for only one party. Receiving just one fine could be the perfect scenario for the UK. With his luck, he may be able to ride the backlash against one fine or just sit out the outrage in the Parliament. But things could get worse if he is fined for more parties. It is widely expected that he will receive at least 3 more fines. This leaves him with 2 options. The first is a painful political impasse. More fines equal to more backlash. Conservative members of Parliament could reach their limit. They could call for him to go. But even then, it is still a long way to go. With local polls looming, Tories may suffer some losses, but they could still hold on to some key seats, keeping Labour at bay. The impasse may be painful, but Johnson would still hold on to his seat. But what happens when he runs out of luck? The final Sue Gray report is yet to be released. If it shows any more personal breaches by the Prime Minister, it may end his career. It could also force the resignation of his officials. It could also prompt more letters of no confidence from Tory members of Parliament, and this internal rebellion could be detrimental in the local polls. Tories could end up losing some key seats to Labour. But even if Boris Johnson does not survive the scandal, the problem with the Conservatives is the lack of a potential successor. There are several options, but none of them measure up. The first one is Rishi Sunak, UK's Chancellor of the Exchequer. He has often been seen as the heir in waiting, but Sunak's popularity has plunged after a series of controversies. He is weighed down by policy blunders and his own scandals, and was also fined for attending Johnson's birthday party. The second is Liz Truss. The Foreign Secretary is popular among Tories, but she lacks voter appeal. Some Conservatives even doubt Truss's ability to keep them in Parliament. The other options include the likes of Ben Wallace, Jeremy Hunt, and Nadeem Zahawi. But they are not mainstream leaders or a credible alternative. This makes replacing Boris Johnson even more difficult. With Europe at war, most Conservatives do not trust his potential rivals and don't want a vacuum in the country's leadership amid the crisis. They would rather deal with a scandal-bogged leader than an unreliable alternative. For now, timing is everything. Boris Johnson may be down with scandals, but he is not out yet. Well, to decode what lies ahead for Boris Johnson and his fate, writer and former BBC senior journalist Andrew Whitehead joins us live from London. Hi, Andrew, and welcome to WION.
It's always great to be on WION. Thank you.
So much controversy, so much back and forth. Andrew, is there a likelihood that Boris Johnson will give in or worse still, hang his boots?
If you'd have asked me 2 months ago, I'd have said that Boris Johnson would be gone by now, but he's not gone. In fact, his position is if anything, a little stronger, and that's entirely thanks to President Putin, because the war in Ukraine has added a new dimension to Boris Johnson's political survival. He's actually he's widely seen, and not just by Conservatives, as having responded well to the crisis in Ukraine. He's been a linchpin of support for President Zelensky. He's been to Kyiv. So that's one side of things. And I think the Conservatives are very reluctant to ditch him just at the moment. But he is also, I mean, his opponents would say he's shameless. He's certainly stubborn. And he has no intention whatsoever of offering his resignation. He's had one fine for breach of COVID regulations. There are more fines quite possibly in prospect, but he will be prized out if he goes at all. He's not going to volunteer to walk from the crease.
Andrew, if at all Boris Johnson quits, is there a potential successor?
Well, I think that's one of the big problems, because as your report suggested, I think a lot of people saw Rishi Sunak, the finance minister, as the most likely successor. He's younger, he's seen as very trustworthy, straight, reliable, sincere. Quite a few of the traits that Boris Johnson doesn't immediately strike you as possessing, but he's badly damaged now. He has himself been fined for a breach of COVID regulations for attending one of these parties, even though Sunak himself is teetotal. I think actually rather worse than that, there's the fuss about his wife's rather privileged tax status, which went down very badly. He's made a few missteps in terms of financial policy, because we have an acute cost of living crisis here and people are feeling the pinch. So I think he's out of the running at the moment, and there is nobody obvious. I mean, the Conservative Party would find somebody if they needed to, but nobody who really gives Conservative members of Parliament the feeling if that person was leading, we'd be in a much better position, which is one of the reasons that they're staying with the devil they've got.
Andrew, how far will this Partygate scandal go? And will Britons really manage to brave through the scandal? Well,
the scandal in one sense is about, you could say, quite small things. Transgressions of anti-COVID rules, bringing fines of £50, maybe in some cases a bit bigger, but of that sort of order. On the other hand, it really strikes at this issue of fair play. Why were ordinary people required to observe the rules, not see their family members, when people at the top of politics, people who were making the rules, were themselves breaking the rules? So there's a lot of public anger. If you had a referendum today, Boris Johnson would be out. But we're not having a referendum today. There's no general election coming for 2 or 3 years. How this will play out, I don't know. I think so far it's looking not too bad for Boris Johnson. But if in the local government elections next month the tide turns against the Conservative Party, then within the party, and this is the crucial thing, within the Conservative Party, the mood might start to sour and turn against him. But he could actually do quite badly in local elections and still convince his party that by the time of the next general election, their position will have recovered. And it's quite difficult to get rid of an incumbent party leader and prime minister who is determined, come what may, not to go.
I have been talking to writer and former BBC senior journalist Andrew Whitehead. Thank you very much for your time and for talking to WION today. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.